Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannabadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vighnopashantaye Karunapurna Sudabdhe Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya Arunachala Paramatman Aruno Bhavachitta Kanja Suvikasaya Vande Sri Ramana Maharshi Acharyasya Padabjam Yo me darshayadhisham Bhantam dhvantamatityaha Akhanda Satchidanande Parabrahmanya Laukike Vilasantam Gurum Nomim Sarvada Hridyaham Bhaje Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha-Jnanaika-Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Vichara Sangraham, Episode number 2, Question 16. Disciple: how do egoity, soul, self and Brahman come to be identified? Master: the example and the exemplified, respectively. The iron ball, egoity. The heated iron ball, the soul which appears as a superimposition on the self. The fire that is in the heated iron ball, the light of consciousness, that is the immutable Brahman which shines in the soul in every body. The flame of fire which remains as one, the all-pervading Brahman which remains as one. From the example given above, it will be clear how egoity, soul, witness and all witness come to be identified. Just as in the wax lump that is with the smith, numerous and varied metal particles lie included, and all of them appear to be one wax lump, so also in deep sleep the gross and subtle bodies of all the individual souls are included in the cosmic Maya, which is nescience, of the nature of sheer darkness, and since the souls are resolved in the self, becoming one with it, they see everywhere darkness alone. From the darkness of sleep, the subtle body, namely egoity, and from that egoity, the gross body, arise respectively. Even as the egoity arises, it appears superimposed on the nature of the self, like the heated iron ball. Thus, without the soul, jiva, which is the mind or egoity that is conjoined with the consciousness light, there is no witness of the soul, namely the self, and without the self, there is no Brahman, that is the all-witness. Just as when the iron ball is beaten into various shapes by the smith, the fire that is in it does not change thereby in any manner, even so the soul may be involved in ever so many experiences and undergo pleasures and pains, and yet the self-light that is in it does not change in the least thereby. Like the ether, it is the all-pervasive pure knowledge that is one, and it shines in the heart as Brahman. 17. Disciple: how is one to know that in the heart the self itself shines as Brahman? Master: just as the elemental ether within the flame of a lamp is known to fill without any difference and without any limit both the inside and the outside of the flame, so also the knowledge ether that is within the self-light in the heart fills without any difference and without any limit both the inside and the outside of that self-light. This is what is referred to as Brahman. 18. Disciple: how do the three states of experience, the three bodies, etc., which are imaginations, appear in the self-light, which is one, unitary and self-luminous? Even if they should appear, how is one to know that the self alone remains ever unmoving? Master: the example and the exemplified respectively. 1. The lamp and the self. 2. The door and sleep. 3. The doorstep and Mahat Tattva. 4. The inner wall and nescience or the causal body. 5. The mirror and the egoity. 6. The windows and the 5 cognitive sense organs. 7. The inner chamber and the deep sleep in which the causal body is manifest. 8. The middle chamber and dream in which the subtle body is manifest. 9. The outer courtyard and waking state in which the gross body is manifest. The self, which is the lamp, 1, shines of its own accord in the inner chamber, that is the causal body, 7, that is endowed with nescience as the inner wall, 4, and sleep as the door, 2. When by the vital principle as conditioned by time, karma, etc., the sleep door is opened, there occurs a reflection of the self in the egoity mirror, 5, that is placed next to the doorstep, Mahat Tattva, 3. The egoity mirror thus illumines the middle chamber, that is the dream state, 8, and through the windows, which are the 5 cognitive sense organs, 6, the outer courtyard, that is the waking state, 9. When again by the vital principle as conditioned by time, karma, etc., the sleep door gets shut, the egoity ceases along with waking and dream, and the self alone ever shines. The example just given explains how the self is unmoving, how there is difference between the self and the egoity, and how the three states of experience, the three bodies, etc., appear. 19. Disciple: although I have listened to the explanation of the characteristics of enquiry in such great detail, my mind has not gained even a little peace. What is the reason for this? Master: the reason is the absence of strength or one-pointedness of the mind. 20. Disciple: what is the reason for the absence of mental strength? Master: the means that make one qualified for enquiry are meditation, yoga, etc. One should gain proficiency in these through graded practice and thus secure a stream of mental modes that is natural and helpful. When the mind that has become ripe in this manner hears about this enquiry, it will at once realize its true nature, which is the self, and remain in perfect peace without deviating from that state. To a mind which has not become ripe, immediate realization and peace are hard to gain through hearing about the enquiry. Yet, if one practices the means for mind control for some time, peace of mind can be obtained eventually. 21. Disciple. Of the means for mind control, which is the most important? Master. Breath control is the means for mind control. 22. Disciple. How is breath to be controlled? Master. Breath can be controlled either by absolute retention of breath, kevala kumbhaka, or by regulation of breath, pranayama. 23. Disciple. What is absolute retention of breath? Master. It is making the vital air stay firmly in the heart, even without exhalation and inhalation. This is achieved through meditation on the vital principle, etc. 24. Disciple. What is regulation of breath? Master. It is making the vital air stay firmly in the heart through exhalation, inhalation, and retention according to the instructions given in the yoga texts. 25. Disciple. How is breath control the means for mind control? Master. There is no doubt that breath control is the means for mind control, because the mind, like breath, is a part of air, because the nature of mobility is common to both, because the place of origin is the same for both, and because when one of them is controlled, the other gets controlled. 26. Disciple. Since breath control leads only to quiescence of the mind, manolaya, and not its destruction, manonasha, how can it be said that breath control is the means for enquiry, which aims at the destruction of mind? Master. The scriptures teach the means for gaining self-realization in two modes, as the yoga with 8 limbs, Ashtanga Yoga, and as knowledge with 8 limbs, Ashtanga Jnana, by regulation of breath, pranayama, or by absolute retention thereof, kevala kumbhaka, which is one of the limbs of yoga, the mind gets controlled. Without leaving the mind at that, if one practices the further discipline such as withdrawal of the mind from external objects, pratyahara, then at the end, self-realization, which is the fruit of enquiry, will surely be gained. 27. Disciple. What are the limbs of yoga? Master. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Of these, 1. Yama. This stands for the cultivation of such principles of good conduct as non-violence, ahimsa, truth, satya, non-stealing, asteya, celibacy, brahmacharya, and non-possession, aparigraha. 2. Niyama. This stands for the observance of such rules of good conduct as purity, saucha, contentment, santosha, austerity, tapas, study of the sacred texts, swadhyaya, and devotion to God, Ishvara pranidhana. Note, the aim of yama and niyama is the attainment of all good paths open to those eligible for moksha. For more details, see works like the Yoga Sutra and Hatha Yoga Deepika. 3. Asana. Of the different postures, 84 are the main ones. Of these again, 4, namely Simha, Bhadra, Padma, and Siddha, are said to be excellent. Of these two, it is only Siddha that is the most excellent. Thus the yoga texts declare. 4. Pranayama. According to the measures prescribed in the sacred texts, exhaling the vital air is Rechaka, inhaling is Puraka, and retaining it in the heart is Kumbhaka. As regards measure, some texts say that Rechaka and Puraka should be equal in measure and Kumbhaka twice that measure, while other texts say that if Rechaka is one measure, Puraka should be of 2 measures and Kumbhaka of 4. By measure, what is meant is the time that would be taken for the utterance of the Gayatri mantra once. Thus, pranayama consisting of Rechaka, Puraka and Kumbhaka should be practiced daily according to ability, slowly and gradually. Then there would arise in the mind a desire to rest in happiness without moving. After this, one should practice pratyahara. 5. Pratyahara. This is regulating the mind by preventing it from flowing towards external names and forms. The mind, which till then had been distracted, now becomes controlled. The aids in this respect are 1. Meditation on the pranava, 2. Fixing the attention between the eyebrows, 3. Looking at the tip of the nose, and 4. Reflection on the nada. The mind that has thus become one-pointed will be fit to stay in one place. After this, dharana should be practiced. 6. Dharana. This is fixing the mind in a locus which is fit for meditation. The loci that are eminently fit for meditation are the heart and Brahmarandhra, aperture in the crown of the head. One should think that in the middle of the 8-petaled lotus that is at this place, there shines like a flame the deity which is the self, that is Brahman, and fix the mind therein. After this one should meditate. 7. Dhyana. This is meditation. Through the I am he thought that one is not different from the nature of the aforesaid flame. Even thus, if one makes the enquiry who am I, then, as the scripture declares, the Brahman which is everywhere shines in the heart as the self that is the witness of the intellect, and one will realize that it is the divine self that shines in the heart as I. This mode of reflection is the best meditation. 8. Samadhi. As a result of the fruition of the aforesaid meditation, the mind gets resolved in the object of meditation without harboring the ideas, I am such and such, I am doing this and this. This subtle state, in which even the thought I disappears, is samadhi. If one practices this every day, seeing to it that sleep does not supervene, God will soon confer on one the supreme state of quiescence of mind. 28. Disciple. What is the purport of the teaching that in pratyahara one should meditate on the pranava? Master. The purport of prescribing meditation on the pranava is this. The pranava is omkara consisting of 3.5 matras, namely A, U, Ma and Ardhamatra. Of these, A stands for the waking state, Vishwajiva, and the gross body. U stands for the dream state, Taijasa Jiva, and the subtle body. Ma stands for the sleep state, Prajna Jiva, and the causal body. The Ardhamatra represents the Turiya, which is the self or I nature, and what is beyond that is the state of Turiyatita or pure bliss. The fourth state, which is the state of I nature, was referred to in the section on meditation, dhyana. This has been variously described as of the nature of amatra, which includes the three matras a, u and ma, as maunakshara, silence syllable, as ajapa, as muttering without muttering, and as the Advaita mantra, which is the essence of all mantras such as Panchakshara. In order to get at this true significance, one should meditate on the pranava. This is meditation which is of the nature of devotion, consisting in reflection on the truth of the self. The fruition of this process is samadhi, which yields release, which is the state of unsurpassed bliss. The revered gurus also have said that release is to be gained only by devotion, which is of the nature of reflection on the truth of the self. 29. Disciple. What is the purport of teaching that one should meditate through the I am he thought on the truth that one is not different from the self-luminous reality that shines like a flame? Master. A. The purport of teaching that one should cultivate the idea that one is not different from the self-luminous reality is this. Scripture defines meditation in these words. In the middle of the eight-petaled heart locus, which is of the nature of all and which is referred to as Kailasha, Vaikuntha and Paramapada, there is the reality which is of the size of the thumb, which is dazzling like lightning and which shines like a flame. By meditating on it, a person gains immortality. From this, we should know that by such meditation, one avoids the defects of 1. The thought of difference of the form I am different and that is different. 2. The meditation on what is limited. 3. The idea that the real is limited. And 4. That it is confined to one place. B. The purport of teaching that one should meditate with the I am he, Sahaham, Soham thought is this. Saha is the Supreme Self. Aham is the Self that is manifest as I. The Jiva, which is the Shivalinga, resides in the heart locus, which is the seat situated in the body, which is the city of Brahman. The mind, which is of the nature of egoity, goes outward, identifying itself with the body, etc. Now, the mind should be resolved in the heart, that is, the I sense that is placed in the body, etc. should be got rid of. When one thus enquires, who am I, remaining undisturbed, in that state, the self-nature becomes manifest in a subtle manner as I. That self-nature is all and yet none, and is manifest as the Supreme Self everywhere without the distinction of inner and outer. It shines like a flame, as was stated above, signifying the truth I am Brahman. If, without meditating on it as being identical with oneself, one imagines it to be different, ignorance will not leave. Hence, the identity meditation is prescribed. If one meditates for a long time without disturbance on the self ceaselessly, with the I am he thought, which is the technique of reflection on the self, the darkness of ignorance which is in the heart, and all the impediments which are but the effects of ignorance will be removed, and the plenary wisdom will be gained. Thus, realizing the reality in the heart cave, which is in the city of Brahman, namely the body, is the same as realizing the all-perfect God. In the city with 9 gates, which is the body, the wise one resides at ease. The body is the temple, the jiva is God, Shiva. If one worships him with the I am he thought, one will gain release. The body, which consists of the 5 sheaths, is the cave. The supreme that resides there is the Lord of the cave. Thus the scriptures declare. Since the self is the reality of all the gods, the meditation on the self, which is oneself, is the greatest of all meditations. All other meditations are included in this. It is for gaining this that the other meditations are prescribed. So, if this is gained, the others are not necessary. Knowing one's self is knowing God. Without knowing one's self that meditates, imagining that there is a deity which is different and meditating on it is compared by the great ones to the act of measuring with one's foot one's own shadow, and to the search for a trivial conch after throwing away a priceless gem that is already in one's possession. Note from Yoga Vasishta: we shall meditate on that which, existing in the form of self, is the Atma Tattva, is effulgent, and which, residing in all living things, always says I. To seek for a God outside, leaving the God residing in the cave of the heart, is like throwing away a priceless gem and searching for a trivial bead. 30. Disciple: even though the heart and the Brahmarandhra alone are the loci fit for meditation, could one meditate, if necessary, on the 6 mystic centers, adharas? Master: the 6 mystic centers, etc., which are said to be the loci of meditation, are but products of imagination. All these are meant for beginners in yoga. With reference to meditation on the 6 centers, the Shiva Yogins say, God, who is of the nature of the non-dual plenary consciousness self, manifests, sustains, and resolves us all. It is a great sin to spoil that reality by superimposing on it various names and forms such as Ganapati, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Maheshwara, and Sadashiva. And the Vedantins declare all those are but imaginations of the mind. Therefore, if one knows one's self, which is of the nature of consciousness that knows everything, one knows everything. The great ones have also said, when that one is known as it is in itself, all that has not been known becomes known. If we who are endowed with various thoughts meditate on God, that is the self, we will get rid of the plurality of thoughts by that one thought. Then even that one thought will vanish. This is what is meant by saying that knowing oneself is knowing God. This knowledge is release. 31. Disciple: how is one to think of the self? Master: the self is self-luminous without darkness and light, and is the reality which is self-manifest. Therefore, one should not think of it as this or as that. The very thought of thinking will end in bondage. The purport of meditation on the self is to make the mind take the form of the self. In the middle of the heart cave, the pure Brahman is directly manifest as the self in the form of I. Can there be greater ignorance than to think of it in manifold ways without knowing it as aforementioned? 32. Disciple: it was stated that Brahman is manifest as the self in the form of I in the heart. To facilitate an understanding of this statement, can it be still further explained? Master: is it not within the experience of all that during deep sleep, swoon, etc., there is no knowledge whatsoever, that is, neither self-knowledge nor other knowledge. Afterwards, when there is experience of the form I have woken up from sleep or I have recovered from swoon, is that not a mode of specific knowledge that has arisen from the aforementioned distinctionless state? This specific knowledge is called Vijnana. This Vijnana becomes manifest only as pertaining to either the self or the not-self and not by itself. When it pertains to the self, it is called true knowledge, knowledge in the form of that mental mode whose object is the self, or knowledge which has for its content the unitary self. And when it relates to the not-self, it is called ignorance. The state of this Vijnana, when it pertains to the self and is manifest as of the form of the self, is said to be the I manifestation. This manifestation cannot take place as apart from the real, that is the self. It is this manifestation that serves as the mark for the direct experience of the real. Yet, this by itself cannot constitute the state of being the real. That, depending on which this manifestation takes place, is the basic reality, which is also called Prajnana. The Vedantic text Prajnanam Brahma teaches the same truth. Know this as the purport of the scripture also. The self, which is self-luminous and the witness of everything, manifests itself as residing in the Vijnana Kosha, sheath of the intellect. By the mental mode which is impartite, seize this self as your goal and enjoy it as the self. 33. Disciple, what is that which is called the inner worship or worship of the attributeless? Master, in texts such as the Ribhugita, the worship of the attributeless has been elaborately explained as a separate discipline. Yet, all disciplines such as sacrifice, charity, austerity, observance of vows, japa, yoga, and puja are in effect modes of meditation of the form I am Brahman. So, in all the modes of disciplines, one should see to it that one does not stray away from the thought I am Brahman. This is the purport of the worship of the attributeless. 34. Disciple, what are the 8 limbs of knowledge, jnana ashtanga? Master, the 8 limbs are those which have been already mentioned, namely yama, niyama, etc., but differently defined. 1. Yama. This is controlling the aggregate of sense organs, realizing the defects that are present in the world consisting of the body, etc. 2. Niyama. This is maintaining a stream of mental modes that relate to the self and rejecting the contrary modes. In other words, it means love that arises uninterruptedly for the Supreme Self. 3. Asana. That with the help of which constant meditation on Brahman is made possible with ease is asana. 4. Pranayama. Rechaka, exhalation, is removing the 2 unreal aspects of name and form from the objects constituting the world, the body, etc. Puraka, inhalation, is grasping the 3 real aspects, existence, consciousness, and bliss, which are constant in those objects. And Kumbhaka is retaining those aspects thus grasped. 5. Pratyahara. This is preventing name and form which have been removed from re-entering the mind. 6. Dharana. This is making the mind stay in the heart without straying outward and realizing that one is the self itself, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. 7. Dhyana. This is meditation of the form I am only pure consciousness. That is, after leaving aside the body, which consists of 5 sheets, one enquires who am I, and as a result of that one stays as I, which shines as the self. 8. Samadhi. When the I manifestation also ceases, there is subtle, direct experience. This is Samadhi. For pranayama etc. detail here, the disciplines such as asana etc. mentioned in connection with yoga are not necessary. The limbs of knowledge may be practiced at all places and at all times. Of yoga and knowledge, one may follow whichever is pleasing to one, or both according to circumstances. The great teachers say that forgetfulness is the root of all evil and is death for those who seek release, so one should rest the mind in one's self and should never forget the self. This is the aim. If the mind is controlled, all else can be controlled. The distinction between yoga with 8 limbs and knowledge with 8 limbs has been set forth elaborately in the sacred texts, so only the substance of this teaching has been given here. 35. Disciple. Is it possible to practice at the same time the pranayama belonging to yoga and the pranayama pertaining to knowledge? Master. So long as the mind has not been made to rest in the heart, either through absolute retention, kevala kumbhaka, or through enquiry, rechaka, puraka, etc., are needed. Hence, the pranayama of yoga is to be practiced during training, and the other pranayama may be practiced always. Thus, both may be practiced. It is enough if the yogic pranayama is practiced till skill is gained in absolute retention. 36. Disciple. Why should the path to release be differently taught? Will it not create confusion in the minds of aspirants? Master. Several paths are taught in the Vedas to suit the different grades of qualified aspirants. Yet, since release is but the destruction of the mind, all efforts have for their aim the control of mind. Although the modes of meditation may appear to be different from one another, in the end all of them become one. There is no need to doubt this. One may adapt that path which suits the maturity of one's mind. The control of prana, which is yoga, and the control of mind, which is jnana, these are the two principal means for the destruction of the mind. To some, the former may appear easy, and to others, the latter. Yet, jnana is like subduing a turbulent bull by coaxing it with green grass, while yoga is like controlling it through the use of force. Thus, the wise ones say that of the 3 grades of qualified aspirants, the highest reach the goal by making the mind firm in the self through determining the nature of the real by Vedantic inquiry and by looking upon one's self and all things as of the nature of the real. The mediocre by making the mind stay in the heart through kevala kumbhaka and meditating for a long time on the real, and the lowest grade by gaining that state in a gradual manner through breath control, etc. The mind should be made to rest in the heart till the destruction of the I thought, which is of the form of ignorance residing in the heart. This itself is jnana, this alone is dhyana also. The rest are a mere digression of words, digression of the texts. Thus the scriptures proclaim. Therefore, if one gains the skill of retaining the mind in one's self through some means or other, one need not worry about other matters. The great teachers also have taught that the devotee is greater than the yogi and that the means to release is devotion, which is of the nature of reflection on one's own self. Thus, it is the path of realizing Brahman that is variously called Dahara Vidya, Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya, etc. What more can be said than this? One should understand the rest by inference. The scriptures teach in different modes. After analyzing all those modes, the great ones declare this to be the shortest and the best means. 37. Disciple. By practicing the disciplines taught above, one may get rid of the obstacles that are in the mind, namely ignorance, doubt, error, etc., and thereby attain quiescence of mind. Yet, there is one last doubt. After the mind has been resolved in the heart, there is only consciousness shining as the plenary reality. When thus the mind has assumed the form of the self, who is there to enquire? Such enquiry would result in self-worship. It would be like the story of the shepherd searching for the sheep that was all the time on his shoulders. Master. The Jiva itself is Shiva. Shiva himself is the Jiva. It is true that Jiva is no other than Shiva. When the grain is hidden inside the husk, it is called paddy. When it is dehusked, it is called rice. Similarly, so long as one is bound by karma, one remains a Jiva. When the bond of ignorance is broken, one shines as Shiva, the deity. Thus declares a scriptural text. Accordingly, the Jiva, which is mind, is in reality the pure self. But forgetting this truth, it imagines itself to be an individual soul and gets bound in the shape of mind. So its search for the self, which is itself, is like the search for the sheep by the shepherd. But still, the Jiva which has forgotten itself will not become the self through mere mediate knowledge. By the impediment caused by the residual impressions gathered in previous births, the Jiva forgets again and again its identity with the self and gets deceived, identifying itself with the body, etc. Will a person become a higher officer by merely looking at him? Is it not by steady effort in that direction that he could become a highly placed officer? Similarly, the Jiva, which is in bondage through mental identification with the body, etc., should put forth effort in the form of reflection on the self in a gradual and sustained manner. And when thus the mind gets destroyed, the Jiva would become the self. The reflection on the self, which is thus practiced constantly, will destroy the mind and thereafter will destroy itself, like the stick that is used to kindle the cinders burning a corpse. It is this state that is called release. 38. Disciple. If the Jiva is by nature identical with the self, what is it that prevents the Jiva from realizing its true nature? Master. It is forgetfulness of the Jiva's true nature. This is known as the power of veiling. 39. Disciple. If it is true that the Jiva has forgotten itself, how does the I experience arise for all? Master. The veil does not completely hide the Jiva. It only hides the self nature of I and projects the I am the body notion. but it does not hide the self's existence, which is I, and which is real and eternal. Disciple. What are the characteristics of the Jivan Mukta, the liberated in life, and the Videha Mukta, the liberated at death? Master. I am not the body, I am Brahman, which is manifest as the Self. In me, who am the plenary reality, the world consisting of bodies, etc., is a mere appearance, like the blue of the sky. He who has realized the truth thus is a Jivan Mukta. Yet, so long as his mind has not been resolved, there may arise some misery for him because of relation to objects on account of prarabdha, karma which has begun to fructify and whose result is the present body. And as the movement of mind has not ceased, there will not be also the experience of bliss. The experience of self is possible only for the mind that has become subtle and unmoving as a result of prolonged meditation. He who is thus endowed with a mind that has become subtle and who has the experience of the self is called a Jivan Mukta. It is the state of Jivan Mukti that is referred to as the attributeless Brahman and as the Turiya. When even the subtle mind gets resolved and experience of self ceases, and when one is immersed in the ocean of bliss and has become one with it without any differentiated existence, one is called a Videha Mukta. It is the state of Videha Mukti that is referred to as the transcendent attributeless Brahman and as the transcendent Turiya. This is the final goal. Because of the grades in misery and happiness, the released ones, the Jivan Muktas and Videha Muktas, may be spoken of as belonging to four categories: Brahmavid, Brahmavara, Brahmavarya, and Brahmavarishta. But these distinctions are from the standpoint of the others who look at them. In reality, however, there are no distinctions in release gained through jnana. Obeisance. May the feet of Ramana, the Master, who is the great Shiva himself and is also in human form, flourish forever. Translated by Professor T.M.P. Mahadevan. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sarvam Sri Ramanarpanamastu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi.